share, and then you may as well just get the ball rolling. Okay, so you want to, it's recording already? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to CEC 15's May business meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. I am CEC 15 President Antonia Ferraro Martinelli. I'll be calling this meeting to order at 6:37 p.m. We're coming to you from District 15's main office at 131 Livingston Street. I'm going to turn it over to the interpreters to read their introductions. We'll go with Mandarin.
Good evening. This is Mandarin interpreter Zio. The following announcement will be in Mandarin for Chinese conference line. 晚上好，欢迎大家来到今天晚上的会议。我们今天的会议有中文、普通话的翻译。如果需要中文、普通话翻译的听众们，请您拨打电话347-966-4114，然后输入会议的 ID 667-109-29井号键，再播报一遍。如果需要中文、普通话翻译的听众们，请您拨打电话347-966-4114，然后再输入会议的 ID 667-109-29井号键。谢谢。Mandarin announcement is completed.
Okay, and Spanish?
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Para las personas que quieran escuchar esta reunión en español, estamos brindando servicios de interpretación simultánea en español. Para acceder, pueden marcar al 347-966-4114 y luego ingresar la contraseña 161-275-001, signo numeral. Repito, el número telefónico para escuchar en español es el 347-966-4114 y luego ingresar la contraseña 161-275-001, signo numeral. Spanish announcement has been completed.
And Bangla?
শুভ সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে। আপনারা যারা এই পুরো অনুষ্ঠানটি বাংলাতে শুনতে চান তারা দয়া করে এই নাম্বারটিতে ডায়াল করুন। নাম্বারটি হচ্ছে 347-966-4114। তারপর এই আইডি নাম্বারটি দিন। আইডি নাম্বারটি হচ্ছে 627-877-380। তারপর নাম্বার সাইনটি চাপুন কিংবা হ্যাশট্যাগ চাপুন। আমি আবারও বলছি, যারা এই পুরো মিটিংটি বাংলাতে শুনতে চান তারা দয়া করে এই নাম্বারটিতে ডায়াল করুন। নাম্বারটি হচ্ছে 347-966-4114। তারপরে এই আইডি নাম্বারটি দিন। আইডি নাম্বারটি হচ্ছে 627-877-380। হ্যাশট্যাগ চাপুন কিংবা নাম্বার সাইনটি চাপুন। ধন্যবাদ। বাংলা অ্যানাউন্সমেন্ট হ্যাজ বিন ডান।
Thank you so much. And there is a sign-in sheet, a link to a sign-in sheet in the chat for those of you who are attending remotely to sign in. Thank you so much.
在注册表里面注册登记，谢谢。
I think we can hear the interpretations. I think. Oh, she did. Okay.
那现在没问题了，好，谢谢。
Again. All right, I will read the roll. Antonia Ferraro, yes, I'm present. Leslie King is absent today. Vanessa Gonzalez-Sioka, I don't know. Although Leslie is here on the Zoom, but we cannot to fully participate as a voting member unless we achieve quorum. Nancy Cruz said she would be late. Katina Rogers.
Yes, here.
Okay. Jonathan Davis wrote in that he would be absent. Hans Arietta. Haven't heard from him. Dinalda Chumney.
Present. Thank you.
Nancy Randall. Kwame Egerton did write in and say he would be coming late. So we do not have quorum. at this moment, so we cannot vote to make this a hybrid meeting and allow us to participate, and we cannot vote on anything. I will turn it over to our treasurer, Tina, to read the introduction.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and we're glad you could join us. For those who are new to CEC meetings, there are 32 CECs throughout the city, plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community school district, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 of whom are elected by parents in the district. The remaining members are appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President and 2 high school students. CEC 15 is a state mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input in educational decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policies and advocates for high quality education that benefits all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 38 elementary and middle schools, 3 pre-K sites, and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve in an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to state and city elected officials. We approve district school zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also submit recommendations for the School Construction Authority's annual capital plan. And as of recent amendments to the law, CECs advise in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org, and write to us about any issues you may want to address or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison, and all of our names and contact information are available on our website. Please remember to sign the attendance sheet. I believe there's a link in. Keep on going. Okay.
Although we don't have any. Well, we can read it. I don't know if it's going to apply. Tonight's meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include the names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment, indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you're attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as time allows. It's possible that not every question and comment will be given time, so the best way to get your question answered is to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment or question. If members do not have a comment, they may cede their time to the chair. Thank you so much, Katina. All right, so we are not going to vote on minutes. We will move that to the next meeting. I am going to read you all's updates. Actually, Lainey, you have a hand raised, and I just want to make sure your question isn't important before I move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to know is since you don't have quorum, do you not want me to present tonight? What's the situation on that?
Because we record these meetings and there are people who are attending remotely, so your presentation is appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So welcome, everybody. We still have a great guest speaker tonight, Lainey Hameson from Class Size Matters. You may be familiar with her radio talk show, Talk Out of School. But first, I do want to give you some updates. This is the last chance to vote in CEC elections. Voting ends promptly at 11:59 tonight. So get your NICSA accounts open and make your decisions. You can still view the candidate forums that took place back in March. I'm going to put the link to my entire president's report in the chat so that you can get all of the links that are in my report. Another thing that, for those of you who didn't get a chance to apply to run, or maybe in the end you might not win, you can also apply to be appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President. So I have a link in my president's report for that application form, as well as a link to the candidate forums. CEC 15 still does have 2 vacancies on the council that I have to announce. One for the parent of an English language learner and another for the parent of a District 75 student. Information about how to apply is also in my president's report. We as a council are about to embark on our annual evaluation of the superintendent. It is one of our mandated duties, and the public participates in this evaluation by giving its feedback through a form that I have linked in my report as well. All of the public feedback and CEC 15 member feedback is submitted directly to both the superintendent himself as well as the DOE. So please participate. I'll just put that link to the form in the chat right now as well. We have received a response to our resolution to demand accountability from the School Construction Authority from the DOE. I'll read it. It's very short. Dear CEC 15, thank you for your resolution adopted January 28th, 2025 regarding concerns over school construction authority project processes. On March 26th, SCA provided a detailed response to address the concerns you've outlined. We appreciate your advocacy. And if you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact us or SCA at any time. So that's the response from the DOE. We wish it. The chancellor made an announcement today. May is Jewish History Month, and she is honoring the month by announcing the forthcoming publication of Hidden Voices Jewish Americans in United States History, Volume 1. The resource will be distributed to all schools for the 2025-26 school year, with 5 districts currently participating in a pilot to provide feedback and strengthen the use of these resources in the classrooms. So I have put some information in my president's report about that you can check out. The next PEP meeting is Wednesday, May 28th at 6 p.m. at Michael J. Petrides School. This is in Staten Island. Speaker sign up begins as always at 5:30 p.m. and promptly closes at 6:15. But whether you attend or not, you can send written testimony to the PEP members using the form that I have linked in my president's report. We have received good news from Librarians Equals Literacy. Last week, their bill, the Librarians Count bill, was passed with a unanimous vote of the New York City Council. They are very grateful to city council members, especially Lincoln Ressler and Rita Joseph, who introduced the bill and have been true champions for school libraries, as well as Shahana Hanif, who's been another incredible advocate, as well as all the other council members who supported, co-sponsored, and voted for the bill. All right, let's talk New York State budget. You may have read that Hochul's bell-to-bell smartphone ban made it into the final budget. I have linked a chalkbeat explainer on the bill and what we can expect. Some of the details are yet to be worked out, but some points are that students who need their cell phones for language translation or caregiver responsibilities may qualify for exemptions. Phones without internet access are still allowed. Schools that allow students off campus for lunch can give students their phones when they're out of the building. And Hochul allocated 13.5 million to support local school districts statewide to implement this ban, but the Office of Business Management estimates that it will cost 25 million in New York City alone. So lots to lots of details to work out there. On foundation aid, Governor Hochul will invest 37 billion towards education, but as a result of the adjustments to the state's foundation aid formula, New York City will still receive hundreds of millions of dollars less than it would have had they not made changes to the formula. While New York City still is receiving more overall funding, they are slated to receive far less. In the end of the negotiations, they were able to restore $30 million by expanding the week for English language learners, but this is far less than the 350 million that New York City stood to lose. Also of note is that the regional cost index, if you remember, the regional cost index was the main sticking point. It was not adjusted. And according to some articles that I've linked in my report, Westchester County was the only county that had their regional cost index adjusted. So that is a little bit frustrating. On the New York City budget front, the Coalition for Equitable Education Funding, recall that they came to a meeting last month. They report that the mayor's executive budget extends funding for a number of the education programs that they highlighted as at risk. They did provide long-term funding for 3K preschool special education classes, extended day 3K and pre-K seats, arts programming, community schools, teacher recruitment, and high-impact tutoring. However, the executive budget leaves out funding for the student success centers. And some of the other critical programs were only extended for 1 year, putting these programs at risk yet again the following year. And those programs are summer programming, learning to work, restorative justice, mental health continuum, early childhood education outreach, and immigrant family communication and outreach. So Coalition for Equitable Education Funding is going to hold a rally, and they're asking people to register to join. That rally will be Tuesday, May 20th at 9 a.m. on the steps of City Hall. And they're also asking that people testify on the FY26 budget. There is going to be a joint council, Committee on Finance and Committee on Education meeting on that same day, May 20th at 10 a.m. And I have some information on how people can submit testimony. You can testify in person or via Zoom. You can also provide your written testimony, and I've put information about all that in my report. An interesting city budget development, the mayor announced after school for all. Adams said he plans to expand after-school care to 20,000 students in kindergarten through 5th grade over the next 3 years. His executive budget will include 331 million for the initiative, bringing the total spending on after school to 755 million. I don't know where this stands, if this is going to end up in the final budget. I got some information from Shana Hanif's office about participatory budgeting grant winners. They announced 3 capital projects. One for PS 282, which is not in District 15, it's in District 13, it's in Park Slope, but they're getting bathroom renovations that are worth about $450,000. The Prospect Park Historic Willink restroom is going to be restored, as is the John Jay Library Media Hub. And then there are 3 expense projects: free summer arts for low-income kindergartners, youth voice for justice, training students in conflict resolution, and a launch of women-owned businesses in Kensington. Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso is announcing the release of graduation awards for 2025. If you're a Brooklyn public school, charter school, or private school, you can apply in the link in my report to nominate your students. The awards, there are 3 different categories of awards: a merit award, a perseverance award for a student who has overcome challenges to improve their academics or achieve graduation, and then a Brooklyn for All award to a student who has demonstrated a spirit of generosity among their peers and among their community. So those submissions are open until May 29th at 5 p.m. And finally, in my continuing segment, federal government law, there are some cuts to mental health programs. So after the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle agreed to finance some additional mental health support for students across the country. I have put a link to an interesting article about the Trump administration clawing back some of these funds, including a teachers college initiative to provide free mental health services to some students in Harlem and East Harlem. And an update on the COVID relief funds. All that New York is part of a group of 17 states suing the federal government over Education Secretary Linda McMahon's decision to cut off hundreds of millions of dollars in COVID aid that school districts were expecting to receive through the end of the year. Good news, a federal judge ordered that the Department of Education restore access to more than $1 billion across the 17 states that sued while the lawsuit plays out. So New York can count on receiving $134 million that the state had planned to spend on various programs, including homeless youth, facilities repairs, additional classroom space, library books, playground equipment, and wheelchair accessible buses. That includes my updates. So welcome, Lainey Hameson.
Oh, hi, everybody. So I'm going to do give you a lot of data about class size and where we are in the whole class size situation. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, here it is. Okay, I'm at the wrong. Here we are. Can you see?
I can see, yes.
Yeah, okay. So just as a recap from some of you who may not be aware, there was a law that was passed in June 2022 by the state legislature and signed by the governor in September 2022, who gave the DOE an extra year comply. But what it called for was phasing in smaller classes over 5 years to much smaller caps of no more than 20 kids per class in grades K through 3, 23 kids in 4 through 8, the 25 in high school classes by the end of by September 2028. Phys ed and performing arts classes were supposed to be capped at 40 instead of 50, where they are now by the union contractual maximum. An additional 20% of classes supposed to be capped at those levels every year. Schools with high levels of poverty supposed to be reduced in class size first. And some exemptions are allowed in the law, but only with the agreement of the UFT and the CEC. We are now towards the end of the second year of this phase in. We were more than 40% compliance when the law was passed, mostly because of enrollment decline. But we did make 46% this year. And yet class size has been going up in the last couple of years in core academic classes. Also, while we may meet the 60% benchmark next year, we are very unlikely, in my estimation, to reach the 80 to 100% compliance in years 4 and 5 without DOE's policies and practices to provide more space. And contrary to what the law requires, we have always been concerned because DOE has never produced a real 5-year plan, which is required by the law. So they've gone sort of from year to year, hoping that things would turn out, making minor adjustments, but not really looking towards the out years in which more space will be necessary. So here's the data for District 15. You're sort of in the middle of the pack when it comes to school districts. This is overall for all grade levels, including high school. You're exactly at 50% compliance. This year, K through 3, 42% compliance. 4th through 8th grade, 45% compliance, and then 56% compliance, 56% for high schools. So you're not doing badly, you're doing pretty well so far. But what is the DOE proposal to reach 60% next year? There was an application process in which principals were in consultation with their SLTs were supposed to apply for funds to lower class sizes and hire more teachers next year, but only if they already had sufficient space for smaller classes within their schools, and they could not ask for lower enrollments. Recently, it was announced that about 746 schools will get at least some funding for smaller classes next year, which is really terrific. However, number one, the list of schools and the total amount has still not been announced. I believe that they were waiting for the state budget to be done because they plan to spend a bunch of the state money for this. They're only putting in, I think, about 100 million of their own money into it at this point in the mayor's executive budget. And yeah,
Can we save them to the end?
Sure.
And go back to the slide?
Sure.
Okay.
okay. And we know there are about 1,500 schools in all. And we know that 500 schools, at least according to the DOE, do not have space at their current enrollment to lower class sizes to the mandated limits. And our analysis, we looked at those 500 schools and they enroll about half of all students. So here is the district by district list of those 500 schools. You can see 20 of them are in District 15. We are also concerned because schools have become more overcrowded in the last year, but not less, especially at the elementary school level and at the middle school level. So the enrollment decline is still not occurring. So we can't assume that we're going to make these benchmarks through enrollment decline alone. And we believe that more school buildings need to be built in order to reach the caps. Now, the SCA itself testified in March that their estimation was that they needed 70,000 more seats to meet the caps. And yet the 5-year capital plan only has about 33,000 seats. One of the problems also is that the DOE and the SCA cut the funding for new capacity by $2.5 billion after the class size law was passed, which makes absolutely no sense. More recently, another $2 billion was added only because the state budget required them to do so from last year. And another problem with the capital plan is they refuse to disclose where almost half of all seats will be located in terms of district, sub-district, and grade level. And why is this important? Well, first of all, both the class size law and a local law that was passed by the City Council in 2014 required this level of transparency to show where they are building schools according to need. But also because in many instances, including in District 15 and Sunset Park, it was only parents, local electeds, and community members who actually found the sites for schools after they were funded in the plan. So if we don't even know where they intend to build, it's going to be much harder to find the sites and get parents and community members involved. And they really deserve this information anyway, and it's legally required. So this is just a chart showing the cut in new capacity in terms of the number of seats over the last few years. You can see the increase more recently because of the state's insistence. Basically, John Liu, the state senator, that's saying that you have to put $2 billion more into new capacity for smaller classes. These are the funded seats in the current 5-year capital plan. You can see they're 557 for District 15. Whether that's going to be enough or not, I doubt. And then this is the number of seats that are totally funded that's going to be ready by September 28. And there are more for District 15. There are over 1,000. Again, we don't know whether that's going to be enough or not. It depends on all sorts of things, including whether enrollment continues to increase in the district. The orange is the new capital plan. The blue is rolled over from the previous capital plan. And then here's a number which just shows you the declining number of seats over the next few years because of past cuts. So I mentioned the lack of transparency violates 2 laws, the class size law, which says that the DOE must submit an annual capital plan showing how many classrooms we add in each year and in which schools and districts to achieve the targets, which it does not. And local law 167, which we pushed hard for way back when, requiring DOE and SCA to disclose in detail where the need for seats are by district, sub-district, and grade level, as well as the data and methodology those estimates were based upon, because they actually did have a column in the capital plan for seats needed, but we could never replicate that estimate. And so we wanted to know how they came to that estimate. After the law was passed, all they did was take out that extra additional column saying how many seats are needed. So it became less transparent rather than more transparent after the law was passed. To make things worse, district planning is now presenting to many CECs their plans for changes of school utilization through next year, including school closures, co-locations, grade expansions, and other changes without any reference to how this might affect the ability of schools to lower class size. In previous years, class size was mentioned as part of these presentations, but the DOE told them to stop mentioning class size after the law was passed, which is really unacceptable. If there was ever going to be a real plan to comply with the law, much of it would be undertaken by district planning, which looks at enrollment and other things, and hopefully would not provide changes in school utilization that would make it more difficult to comply. One of the things, I was on the class size working group, and one of the things that the working group did recommend, we put together a lot of recommendations about how to find and acquire more space for schools more effectively and in an accelerated manner. One of the things we suggested was that in many cases, there are overcrowded schools that have pre-Ks and 3Ks, but empty seats in nearby CBOs. And according to DOE, there are 266 elementary schools that are too overcrowded at the current enrollment to achieve the caps, and yet more than half of them have pre-Ks and 3Ks. We looked at District 15. There are 9 elementary schools that are too overcrowded on that DOE list, yet 89% of them have pre-K and 3K classes. And in many cases, these CBOs are struggling to fill their classes. And right now, there are thousands of empty seats, and DOE is threatening to close any program, any pre-K and 3K program in a CBO that does not achieve 95% utilization rate. So this would really benefit, I believe, both the elementary schools to allow them to lower class sizes, and the CBOs, which would allow them to stay open, have a more sustainable budget, because also they're reimbursed in terms of the number of kids that they enroll rather than the number of classes they offer, which is how schools are reimbursed for their pre-K classes. And so if you have a low enrollment, it's very hard to remain economically stable. And another point is that CBOs actually rate higher on one of the two quality assessments that DOE uses to estimate how good these programs are, and equal on the other one than the programs in DOE public schools. We have a lot of other recommendations in our report, none of which have been actually implemented by DOE. To merge more co-located schools, which could create more space, because every time you have a co-location, it takes away classroom space for the need to replicate administrative and cluster spaces. Revive the Educational Construction Fund, which has become really quite moribund in recent years, but it was created to build new public schools as part of mixed-use developments, acquire more closing parochial schools, and analyze all city, state, and federally owned buildings and empty lots that may be available for schools. They were supposed to do this back in 2014, according to another law that was passed, and they never did. And of course, district planning should consider class size in their proposals, and class size should be specifically analyzed in the educational impact statements that are required by law before a vote of the PP to approve these changes in school utilization. And then one more issue that I just wanted to highlight, which is, we know we need a lot more housing. We know there's a shortage of housing in New York City in general, especially affordable housing. And yet we are actually producing a lot more housing with no clear plan to build enough schools along with that housing. And actually 2024 saw the highest rate of increase of housing units since 1965. And in the class size working group report, we also talked about how the capital planning and the ULER process needed to be reformed in order to make sure that schools are built along with new housing rather than years afterwards. So how could the CEC help? Well, you mentioned this earlier in your president's report. There are going to be hearings on May 20th at the City Council of the education budget and the capital plan. You can testify either remotely or in person. Remotely is easier for most parents, and public testimony won't begin until afternoon. And we're going to have talking points for parents to talk about the class size and the lack of space, as well as other problems with the class size plan. Send an email. We have now produced an email that you can click on, sending your council member not to pass the capital plan unless it provides sufficient space to allow schools to lower class size according to the law. And now that the state budget is done, the calendar starts, or the clock starts for DOE to post its actual plan for next year. It actually should be a multi-year plan. We don't know whether they will actually provide the multi-year plan, but they have to post something called their plan. I think it's going to have to be posted by law by May 25th. And public hearings will start within 15 days after that, including your CEC will have to have a hearing on this. And many of the same points can be made at that hearing. Sign up for our newsletter for further updates. Here's the link, which I can also put in the chat, as well as the other links. And if you have any questions, you can, ask them now or email me at that email below.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lainey. So much information. Katina, would you like to do the honors?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
We're going to go to public comment.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If anybody
Sorry.
has, if anybody has any questions out there, just raise your hand. If anybody in the interpretation rooms has a question, let me know. Interpreters, are there any questions on your one?
No questions on the Spanish line.
There are no questions from Mandarin line.
No questions on the Bangla line.
Okay, there we have a hand raised.
Yes, Ilya, do you want to come off of mute? Ilya, did you have a question you wanted to share?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Ilya, can
here
you-
I am. I apologize. My question was for the CBOs, which is a great idea. Does that require additional funding, like paying the CBOs, but then also paying for the additional teachers? Or is that going to be a net sort of like, since the kids are in already being paid, you know what, if the tuition for the kids is already being paid for in schools, will I guess my question is that the idea of sending the pre-K and 3K seats to CBOs, does that require additional funding? I guess that's basically the question.
Well, it kind of depends as to whether they have a full class and would have to create a new class. Since many of the classes in the CBOs are not full, it wouldn't require any more money because, no, wait a second. Yeah, it would require more money to move some of these kids into the CBOs because they're paid per student rather than per class. So
Right.
yeah, that would take additional funding. What I'm very worried about, however, is that if all these CBOs close, that will really have a double whammy because it'll mean less pre-K and 3K available to parents, and it will, you know, sort of prevent that space being used in a way that would allow for more actual elementary schools to lower class size.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from folks on Zoom? And we don't have any members of the public here with us today, so I'll go ahead to council members. Antonia, I know you had a question. Do you want to start?
No,
Yeah,
Sorry.
I do. All
Fernanda.
good. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for all the information. Thanks for the advocacy. This is a really basic question and hopefully, you can help me understand it because I've never been able to wrap my mind around this particular statistic. So in District 15, 50% of we are meeting like the class size legislation goal at 50%. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, when we say that we're meeting the goal, what does that mean?
It means
Does
50. Yeah.
Does that mean that 50% of the actual classes in the district, of the thousands of them, 50% of those are meeting the head count goal?
Yes.
Or does that mean something different?
No, that's exactly what it means.
Okay, got it. So it isn't as though, see, I think that this is I have to think a little bit more because sometimes I'm a slow processor on this stuff, but to be completely candid, these are like, it just seems like these are really funny numbers and very easy to monkey around with from the systems perspective, because, you know, school enrollment being what it is, kids can be grouped in, you know, so many different ways flexibly that, you know, kind of hides the actual problem. Do you know what I'm saying?
There are ways to monkey around the statistics for sure.
Yeah.
But we don't have specific evidence of that.
Sure, no, I'm not trying to say that that's the case. It's just that, like, from the vantage point of a school administrator, you know, when like incoming classes happen and they're set up in the system in like late August, right? The school secretary creates, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 sections on the grade and puts kids into it, and we don't like actually sort children out physically by class until like sometimes weeks or months later. And sometimes, depending on how the school is programmed, meaning how teachers are matched with actual children, you know, classes can be smaller or much larger in actual lived experience, and it doesn't reflect that way on our actual computer system. So sometimes there are two parallel systems operating, which is, I guess, part of why this is so sort of like odd and crucial at the same time. It seems like, is it your vantage point, from your vantage point, do you think that what exists now, in particular with District 15, has been optimized?
I don't know what you mean optimized. I mean, I know that there are schools that have the space for smaller classes that aren't getting smaller classes. So I suppose it's not optimized. The process for applying for these funds for next year, it was not transparent. And some schools were rejected for reasons that they don't understand. Many schools were unable to apply because their enrollment is too high at their current level, and DOE has made no move, and in some ways has insisted that they are not going to cap enrollment for the purposes of reducing class sizes. And they're pretty clear that they plan to try to get all overcrowded and over-enrolled schools exempted from ever having to lower class size. That's their goal at this point. Again, we hope that the UFT and the CSA doesn't go along with that, but we don't really know what's going to happen in future years. The data that we have available is from October 31st, which is, the classic data that they report to the state, though they do have additional reporting dates now, including at the end of the year. So we will be looking at the June data again and trying to see whether it's very different from what the data looked like in October, to see whether compliance went up or down. And I know that there are schools in which they regroup students in some ways in order to evade even violating the union contractual limits and shifting kids around from classroom to classroom. But another thing you need to take into account is this includes all sorts of classes that we didn't even originally plan to be included in this, like, for example, if phys ed, performing arts classes, all sorts of, in high school especially, many other kinds of classes that aren't core academic classes that by nature tend to be very small anyway. And the high school situation is very, very weird because there are a lot of small high schools that comply, but many very large high schools in which almost no classes comply. And yet these kinds of disparities aren't completely shown up, even in the averages and the statistics that we see. So, the problem of overcrowding is worst generally at the high school level, and they are making absolutely no moves to do anything about that at this point. So what's good is that, the fact that I think 800 schools applied for these funds showed that there is a desire among most principals and most parents to really go for smaller classes. And they were actually willing in many cases to do tours of the school and asked for renovations that would create more classroom space where currently the space is unused or underutilized or used for storage or something like that. Unfortunately, we found out that in many cases, the DOE rejected even those requests to renovate schools in order to create more classroom space. What they did say very clearly, and we supported this, is that you're not supposed to affect programming at schools. So we don't want schools to necessarily get rid of their art rooms or their music rooms or any other schools, certainly not the classrooms or the spaces that are used for intervention services. And we so far haven't heard of that happening, but I'm sure that at some schools it probably will happen as well. They also ask schools to implement more online learning, which is something that we're very much against, especially without parental consent. And they actually put out an advisory guidance to principals in the last summer, saying that they should assign kids to these online classes even before parents consented. And we filed a complaint along with some parents because I had seen that the state had put out regulations saying that no kids should be put in these classes without parent consent. And within a few weeks, the DOE took back that guidance and rewrote it. So We do know that some schools have done this. They were doing it already, small schools for AP classes and stuff. So that's not a particularly good outcome as far as we believe. But you know, generally speaking, I think it at this point, you know, we're hoping for good results next year, but we're also hoping for a real multi-year plan where they are going to have to explain how they're going to make the space for this.
Thank you very much.
Nancy Grace?
No, thank you so much. I appreciate your being here. So you want to ask first?
Oh, gosh, I mean, I'm still processing all the information that you shared. I share your sense of frustration and disbelief that there's never been a real plan for this. Like, it's such a significant change. And it can't happen accidentally. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess one thing that I was hoping was that in this past round of funding, that perhaps they would look at what principals were proposing and use something from that to try and scale some of those solutions more broadly. But I haven't heard any indication that, you know, that they're looking at those proposals for anything except the schools that submitted them. So it doesn't seem like that's under consideration either. So no real question, but if you're willing to share your slides, I would love to be able to parse the data a little bit more slowly.
Absolutely. Happy to share.
Yeah, we would like to post those slides on our website, if you don't mind, Lainey.
Sure.
So please do share them. So in my, you know, experience of the last year with this, you know, only 4 of our schools did not receive the funds for class size, and it was because their proposals were proposing things outside of the rubric. And one of them in particular that I liaise with, 107, I think is sort of like an interesting case because there's just literally there's no space there. And when I had a meeting with their SLT a few weeks ago, I did bring up the pre-K, 3K, even K issue. And I think your proposal there is interesting and should be explored. It does seem like the DOE is building the ship as it's going, which seems to be what we always do.
Or pretending to. I mean, there's a lot of movement, but.
Yeah, I mean, we never know next year if they do this again, who knows what they're gonna add to that schema. In my conversation with that SLT, you know, they did express, you know, if we can't meet the class size mandates, concerned that maybe teachers would not be as likely to want to teach at schools that aren't meeting this. It's not going to be as interesting or it's not going to be a good enough job. They're not going to want to go to those schools where they have the overcrowded classrooms. But then on the other hand, if you take away the 3K, pre-K, or K, is that taking away a pipeline to the school for first grade and beyond? Although they're different, they're enrolled differently. It's a different application process for the early childhood. So I think that is a great idea with some potential pros and cons, and I think you're onto something with that. So if nobody else has any other questions,
I wanted to say 2 things. One, your pre-K, 3K idea is really intriguing to me because those actually aren't students. Those children, although we call them students, are not technically students, and our New York City Department of Education is not legally required to serve any of those children. The idea that de Blasio folded them in to our current schools through a gift of federal money and local funds is groundbreaking and exciting, but they technically don't actually have legal right to be in schools. Schools are for New York City school students of school age. And that means kindergarten through grade 12. So like that's one point of advocacy that I don't know if anybody's mentioned, but it is, and I'm like very pro pre-K and 3K in schools, but not at the expense of our core mission, which is K-12 schooling. So that's like one component. And then the second thing to say is that, well, but really there's three. The second thing that I wanted to say is that it feels like in the fall, there could be some grassroots data collection effort that CECs could undertake in partnership with your organization, or that you could lead or whatever, where parents can kind of be activated and aware of reporting like, hey, my child's first grade class has 28 students in it right now. That sure does seem like a lot. What are we doing here? Or my child's school receives class size reduction funds or doesn't. And like, I know how they were used at our school, or I don't. Like those things seem interesting and helpful to know. And then the third part about how district planning comes to CEC meetings and doesn't fully disclose any information about class size. I think that CECs could universally band together and say, hi, unless you're willing to give all the data about these relevant issues in our district, please don't schedule the meeting until you have that data prepared. Because these people have a legal requirement to come to this meeting. We do host them, but we don't have to just take whatever is on offer. I still have a feeling of small bitterness that I sat through 2 budget presentations this calendar year, one from the DOE where only a certain legal script was approved and people read it to us. And then like the rest of the story took an hour for an advocate to come and give about budget efforts where we're about to lose $2 billion and like all this other advocacy was necessary. The DOE could just as well have said all of those points of facts about $55 million being cut from really key essential programs for kids in its own presentation. And I'm so tired of half the story being told and a script being read by multiple people across districts that is absolutely identical, and us actually giving them a check mark as though they have done their job. That is not the role. The role is full transparency, and we should hold them accountable as such. And I would be happy to talk more about this, but those are my thoughts right now. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, please, Nancy, go ahead.
Hooray for you, thank you. I just wanted to mention, I'm sorry, talking about like the 3K program, in the face of Head Start about it to be cut. I think we do have an obligation to provide that and to make sure that we can find a way to do that. I would never advocate for cutting that in any way. There needs to be enough room for all of it. We need to make the room for all of it. It's vitally important to have that program.
I agree. So when ODP comes in the summer, before I leave this office, I will have a conversation with Tori and tell her you need to factor in class. They did, to their credit. Then when they came last summer, they did have data that included the class size mandates into their data, to their credit. So, but I will make sure to let Tori Fenton know to keep doing that. Don't
Good.
stop. And please remind me to do that.
Yeah.
If you look at the presentations they gave this year, none of them mention class size. And these presentations have proposals that go through next year. And they were specifically asked at 1 or 2 CEC meetings about this, and they were told that the DOE Central specifically told them not to include any more information about class size in their presentations. And if you really look at the situation, it's exactly where class size should be addressed in district planning, because you need a really detailed analysis of where there is space, what's happening to enrollment, where kids might be shifted around, not the existing kids in schools, but for the future, all those kinds of, things. And instead they're going ahead with school closures, co-locations, grade expansions, all of which may very well make it more difficult to comply rather than facilitate it.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, Lainey. It's always a pleasure to have you on. You are such a resource to our schools. Thank you for everything that you do. We will now move on. All right, I will let the record show one of our members just arrived.
Thank you, Antonia. And I know I speak for many people that we're sad that you're no longer going to be the chair, and you've done a tremendous job.
Oh, thank you so much, Lainey. Yeah, you know what? 8 years is enough. I'll be around though. I'll be sitting in the audience. It'll be good to be on the other side.
You can help with my advocacy.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. Okay, so, we are just 5 people, here. Thank you for coming, Kwame. And fortunately, you missed the presentation. We're not going to be able to, do these resolutions. Unfortunately. No, we don't have a quorum. So we cannot, into these resolutions. But I'm glad we did get to hear from Lainey. Katina, would you like to present the trigger?
Sure. So,
I can share it up on my
okay,
screen.
great, thank you. So our expenses are proceeding in a way that is, totally expected and fine. We have spent 5,400, with another about 5,400 still pending that hasn't worked its way all the way through the system yet. So that leaves us with 14,000, which is more than spend in the remainder of the year. I think the most important thing for folks who are here is to please remember to submit any expense reimbursement requests. We're getting to mid-May at this point, so if those could come in by the end of the month, that would be great. We'll try to make sure everybody gets processed.
Oh,
Thank you very
much. Okay, that was the May one. Sorry, I had the wrong one. Oh, great. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think that Anthony Aguilar might be on the call. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Hi, Anthony. So I have a question, procedurally. So we're coming to the end of a term. So everybody's sort of leaving this council unless they get reelected, but last year at this time, Linda Perez told us we should vote for a budget at the end of the year to keep things running for the new year. Because come July 1, when the tap gets shut off at June 30th, right? After that, you can't spend anything. Correct?
So, right now, the only thing that we can really spend on is reimbursements, unless there's
Right.
already purchase orders already in the system that we're
Okay.
paying out.
But P card, Shanice
Yeah.
can still use P card to pay
And
for
P card.
food.
Yes.
So when does the P card shut off for this council?
I have to get back to you with a specific date, but everything ends pretty much June. Everything else that's left, I don't know the exact date, but I can get it for you.
Okay. Can a council vote for a preliminary budget for the next incoming council until they hold their annual meeting and elect their officers and elect their, and vote for their own budget, just so that they can get
June 13th is the last day for the
June
P
13th?
card.
Oh, okay. My AA is telling me that June 13th is the last day for the P card. So that means we cannot purchase food for June 17th meeting.
That purchase, yeah, that purchase order should have been submitted ahead of time before that closed.
Purchase order?
Purchase order, okay.
Okay.
But anyway, back to my other question. Can a current council vote on a budget as sort of a preliminary holdover budget for that new council, so they have something to use, so that until they hold their own annual meeting?
So no, I don't think so. Once June goes, this money is no longer the council's money. This money
Okay.
gets sent back. So
Okay.
the new council starts with a whole new budget as of their term.
And then- Right, okay.
And
All right,
that's in
so-
September or
Well,
August?
They start in July.
They start in July.
And that's in July.
So they just have to have their annual meeting and vote for their budget, and if you guys want, if they want food, they need to pay for it on their own and get reimbursed. Okay, basically.
I got a suggestion. Can we order the food, like pre-order it for the 17th?
Yeah, for the 17th.
Yeah, we can.
For
Yeah.
July, no.
P card?
With the,
No, I'm saying for the
Purchase
June
order.
17th, meeting. Can-
Or like prepaid?
Yeah, can you like say you go to,
That would be up to you guys.
Subway or whatever, whoever, and you say, we're gonna order this for the 17th, we're paying for it now. Or we're making an order for the pizza and the salad or whatever we
I
did.
think that
And then we pay
vendor,
for it, and
yeah,
then the vendor just, okay, the 17th, they paid already, hey, deliver it.
yeah, I think you just have to work that out with the vendor.
Just a suggestion.
Okay.
And then July people, they just gotta
They just
deal with it.
have to figure it out. They have to
They
figure it out.
gotta pay.
Yeah. All right, we have one question from a Rochelle. Hi, Rochelle. Do you
Hi,
wanna-
hi. Yes, I have to just unmute myself. Okay, it's my first time at one of these meetings, so I hope I'm, addressing at the right point. I know there's like a point where there's like a business part, and I don't know if we're in those minutes now.
Sure.
What do you say?
Go for it.
Okay, so I have a practice, a local practice here in Brooklyn, and I have a PhD in social communication, and I help children with social challenges, and I give professional developments for the schools. And what's unique about it is that I help schools work with students' misbehavior, teachers' burnout, and helping with parental involvement, and helping that whole cycle to create a positive school culture. I am an MWBE. I have a New York City vendor ID, and this is really cutting edge ways of helping the teacher's well-being, helping the teacher gain that mindfulness, helping reduce that student conflict. And I'd love to be able to share those resources with your principals in the district. And I'm constantly getting requests for me to work with people in District 15, the whole area. So I'd love to know some next steps, how I'd be able to, if I'm at the right place. I was guided to come to this meeting.
Sure. I mean, you can email us some of your resources and some of the information. And we can share it out with the community, sort of in a blast. And I can certainly share it with our superintendent.
That would be great.
Hold on, we have a member who has an idea.
I'm excited, man. I get your email right now. I need that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want to put it in.
Absolutely. I absolutely will. Sure. Who is speaking to me?
This is Kwame Egerton speaking. I would like to write the email down right now. I'm a little impatient because I'm so excited. I
Oh.
can't wait. Chat, can can you verbalize the email? so I can write it down?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna put it in right.
I think you just muted yourself when you hit, I think her elbow hit the keyboard and she muted herself. Let's see. I can unmute her.
Okay, sorry. Hello, hello?
Yes, we hear you again. We hear you again.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, good. I'm excited. You see, I was coming on all like hesitant because it's my first time at such a presentation. So yes, my email is office, OFFICE, office at whole, WHOLE, storyspeech.com. I'll put it in the chat box as well. And I can send my New York City capability statement and whatever is needed. I'll be so happy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so happy to provide the services. Thank you so much.
All right, before I log off this call, I want to make sure we see your email in the chat.
Thank you so. Yeah, thank you for being so kind and so wonderful. This is great. We want to bring things to our district and let me just get that in here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for everything you do for our students.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that.
Okay, guys, I don't have any old business or any new business.
Yes, old business
Okay.
question, about the SCA response,
Mm.
whether we want to do anything.
It's a little lackluster in your opinion.
So there was, the deputy chancellors, and he was actually the person who I was engaging with the most when I was at the board meeting. But it seems like he had clearly deputized the other person to actually send that more substantive response that came earlier, right? And then
That was from the SCA. Or the SCA's response or the DOE's?
well, the SCA's response, but I guess both in tandem, because when I was at the SCA board meeting, Dan Weissler, right? That's who was engaging me most directly.
He signed the letter.
Right. So that letter doesn't say anything. But the other one is sort of also says nothing, but in a longer way. I guess I'm trying to think, on one hand, like how much energy is it worth to keep like pushing? But on the other hand, I did think that at minimum, the recommendation from the resolution to have someone from the comptroller's office serve on the board seemed very actionable. And there was no mention of that in the SCA.
Yeah, it's called the comptroller. He was all for it.
Right? So I was wondering if it would make sense to respond even with just that specific question. Or if there's some other way that the council would want to respond as a whole. I should respond as an individual. I just don't know what, like.
I feel like I need to mull that over.
Given that class size presentation and the DOE's, avoidance of putting together a plan and the school construction authority's direct responsibility to provide venues for students that are like meeting legal code and also to be responsive to the larger constituency of like people who elect our government. It feels like those two things go really closely together and there could be an open conversation around like, hi, we're noticing, I don't know, I'm not the person to say this at this moment, but like a pattern of evasion. And we're just wondering, it seems like all of the things that nobody wants to talk about are things that all still need to be discussed. And your response is inadequate, and not commensurate with the level of responsibility that you directly hold to achieve the goals that are set forth in the legislation. How are you going to meet them? Please be specific. I mean, I don't know. It's just it's really frustrating to get this, like, because this letter just says like, hi, I heard you, thanks.
See the other letter.
Right, see the other letter. And if you have any questions, please feel welcome to contact us. No, we did ask you the questions and you didn't answer them. And this is just like such a pattern with all CECs that, you know, it's like, how much energy do we have to keep asking? It's just, this is not supposed to be a symbolic body,
Right.
but they act like it is. And it's so frustrating and it's insulting to parents.
I think it's important to pursue it further. And I won't be here next year, but I think maybe some of you will. And I think it's really worth. Gabby, I'll be a minute. Or accidentally answered. My husband. I think it's worth, like, one of the things in the letter that was really frustrating was when they said that somebody had actually had somebody who verified. Yeah, and that this money that was paid out, that the work had been done, and we know the work has not been done. So there's a big disconnect here. Either they're not getting the right information or they're not giving us the right information. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to imply malfeasance in any way, but like, oh, it was implied. There's pretty serious money that's just disappeared without our children getting the benefit of that. And that is very.
Right. So I guess like procedurally, I mean, does that take the form of like another resolution or just like a letter?
You just write another letter and you know, if we want to.
All right. So I can work
Maybe
on
from
drafting something.
From the council, so
Yeah.
it has, you know, I'm happy to.
Right.
I mean, it
Back
could
to
be, we could either put it on the agenda for a vote. You could just send it, or whoever wants to sign it can
Okay.
sign on, depending on if we can get quorum and make it happen.
Why don't I try to put together a draft and send it around to the council by email? And we can see based on what's in there.
Thank you.
What people want to do.
Yeah.
And maybe I can go on the, whatever the social media feeds, and maybe there can be like a borough president sign on or something like that says like, hey, you know, this is a consistent issue that continues to be problematic. What is the actual answer here, folks?
And I know Alexa Vilas's office had been looking into that $17 million or whatever. So I wonder if her office would be willing to sign on and sign on.
Did they get the same response?
No, well, she had earlier in the process at PS 15, she had confirmed that the money had been paid out and that the work had not. And so there was.
She's saying something different.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
what the SCA's. And what we have.
If you watch the YouTube video, Civil Kavanaugh really has a lot to say.
Yeah, the YouTube video?
No, all of our meetings are recorded.
Okay,
Yeah. So she had a lot to say, all on tape.
Okay.
I think this is not just in our. It's an important,
Yeah.
ongoing issue.
It's,
Not falling apart. There's not,
Right.
not, the dangerous situations
yeah.
exist in the schools because we're not.
And it's hard, like there's so many different competing priorities at the same time. I mean, we were talking about these 5 before this and everything that's happening at the federal level. It's hard to know where to focus on. We have done a lot of groundwork on this.
Agreed.
My suggestion. I don't wanna say give a threat.
No,
I said, I don't wanna say for the record.
You have my attention, go ahead.
However,
What was spicy suggestion?
when you put the media involved.
Oh,
That the media, like News 12 or something, then officials start to move different. They don't wanna be embarrassed. And I think we're gonna keep getting the shuffle and the yeah, cause I feel like it is now. It's clear. You gotta call it what it is. If it's not, prove it. Prove it, show me the money.
well, it's under investigation
But I'm saying, let's.
by the Attorney General.
So there's an inspector general's office for the FDA, but it's
but that's
internal to the
the person who
FDA, like,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's the
it's completely tautological. Yeah.
It's not, the accountability is not external, so. If you need any help on that, this is why I'm back.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
I'll help you.
Rochelle, do you still?
Yeah,
Have your
I'm just waiting here patiently because I didn't write down your email address. I only put down mine. What's your email address?
cec15@schools.nyc.gov.
Okay, perfect. So we'll trade emails. Thank you so much. And good evening. Okay,
Yeah,
Thank you.
great to
Thank
meet
you.
thank you.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you. I
I'm
look forward to it.
going to call this meeting to a close at 7:57. We do have a lot of events coming up, by the way. In addition to our May 27th calendar meeting, there's a recognition ceremony at MS88 on May 28th in the afternoon. So there's a whole list of save the dates at the end of the agenda that you might want to look at, especially the June 6th Learning Together Field Day at Prospect Park Picnic House at 10 a.m. I will be there, tabling, and helping out. I'll probably raffle off some more banned books, and my kids have a bunch of fidget spinners that they want to get rid of.
Awesome.
So if you all want to join, and I hope, by that time we know who the new council members are, and maybe they would like to join too. So 10 a.m. June 6th at the Prospect Park Picnic House. I hope to see everybody there. Okay. All right, good night, everybody.
Thanks
I
for
have a
being here.
question, it's off the record.
Okay, so let's stop the recording.
I'm gonna end the meeting.
End the meeting.